approve those?
Therese, let's call the meeting to order and just
Oh.
have Rachel take the roll just for
Sorry about
purposes of
that.
our, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, I'll just call the roll. Therese Sweeney Drake,
Here.
Stephen Dlott. I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, he's okay. And Keith Thomas.
Here, present. Yes.
And
100%.
just for purposes of our recording and for the minutes, this is a meeting of the University Heights Civil Service Commission. The meeting's been called to order. We have a full complement of our board. And with that, I'll turn it over to our chair, Therese Sweeney Drake.
Okay, thanks Lou for keeping me formal, or in line. So the first thing is to approve the minutes from the meeting. Rachel provided a copy of those from February 9th. If you have questions on any of those issues, but the amendments to the rules were pretty, I think Luke they had been going through all the rules anyhow, and so we noticed some things that we needed to change. That was item 4 on that agenda item, which was more just making a correction from 3rd grade firefighter to 4th grade firefighter. But the other one was more substantive in the sense, well, I guess of moving it from 4th to 3rd was substantive too, but it was more a technical correction. The other amendment to civil service rule 9, right? Wasn't that 9 section 4, which was it was talking about moving people who passed with a grade of 7. We had a number and we limited to number 8. We removed that number of 8 and we're going to let that go forward.
Right, and that was in connection with the firefighter exam.
Right, firefighter exam. So let me see here. I didn't print out the minutes. So what else was on that minutes besides those? It was really approving we approved the police department entrance exam notice, but that was us making a determination. We didn't really need to see that, that was more internal. And then the other one was on the potential conflict of interest with Clancy and Associates.
Correct.
We waived any potential hiring them because of an employee having a familial relationship there, even though it was kind of remote. What else was there?
The only other thing was the approval to post applications electronically and accept electronic delivery of applications.
Yeah, we passed that. So if everybody's had a chance to look at those minutes, do I have, is there a motion to move to accept and?
I'll make a motion to approve and accept the minutes from our prior meeting.
Steve, you're on mute. I don't know if you want to make any if you want to second that or.
Yes, thank you. Didn't realize that.
That's okay.
I will second it.
Okay, terrific. Rachel, you want to call?
Okay. Therese Sweeney Drake,
I approve.
Stephen Dlott,
Approve.
Keith Thomas,
Approve.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so the next thing is the waiver of conflict of interest for the applicant taking the police civil service test. What are the specifics on that?
Who is the best person to explain the situation? Is it you, Rachel, or is it the
sure.
chief?
Vanessa Nieder, who is going to be proctoring the entrance exam, is the aunt of someone who applied, and everything is very, scored blindly, like they're just numbers on their tests instead of their names. So she had suggested, and the mayor thought it was a good idea too, that I could be there and I could take a picture of his exam before he turns it in, so we'll know what the number is in case there is some sort of challenge to it. But it's all a blind process, so she won't even know which test is his. It's scored immediately.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Who is Vanessa? Is she an employee of the city?
No, she works for Clancy.
Oh, she works, okay, okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah,
I don't either.
The city is as Ms. Mullen indicated, putting in a couple of different protocols in place just to, out of an abundance of caution, make sure that the test is fairly administered. And as I think we're going forward, it's on our ongoing desire to be transparent about all these issues with the commission and anyone else who might be interested. So that's why this is before you today.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to waive any potential conflict or appearance of a conflict for the employee of the test company being a relation to an applicant to take the test.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Ms. Sweeney Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Gilat,
yes,
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
we're halfway there.
Okay, and then waiver of Rule 3, Section 3, signature requirements of certain applicants. Can you tell us what the issue is?
Yeah, so really items 3 and 4 on your agenda today really relate to the same issue, which is that in connection with receiving applications electronically, we ran into a couple of issues. One is that there were some applications that were submitted that lacked signature, and signature is a requirement under Rule 3, Section 3 of our Civil Service Commission rules. And then also in connection with the applications received, there were some applications that did not, for example, include items that were required in the notice, such as a copy of a driver's license or copy of a diploma from high school. And the issue that is before the city and the commission is that the applications were essentially delivered and accepted electronically, and the applicants were not notified of the deficiencies in their application in a time frame prior to the expiration of the deadline. And so there's at least an argument to be made on those folks' behalf that they were not notified that their application wasn't complete or wasn't accepted. They have a reason to believe their application was accepted without any opportunity to correct it. And what's happened in the past is that applications were always hand delivered, and the applicant would kind of wait there while the person at City Hall who received the application went through it to verify that all of the boxes were checked and all of the requirements met. And if they weren't, they would hand the application back to the applicant and say, we can't accept this. You don't have, a copy of your driver's license or whatever it would happen to be. And so we would end up accepting that application as supplemented then by the applicant. So we have kind of a couple of issues. One is that I think the folks who've applied probably have a decent argument that we accepted their application because they weren't notified at any point that their
Right,
applications were deficient, number one. And number two, we have an interest on behalf of the city and its taxpayers of having the broadest pool of potential applicants possible. We don't want to turn folks away at this juncture when they haven't even taken the test yet, who may very well be qualified applicants. So what we're asking the commission to do is waive these requirements from a timing standpoint, so we can go back, have the applicants supplement their applications, submit whatever wasn't in the packet, sign an application if it wasn't signed, and then we would simply consider their applications to be received as of the date of supplementation for purposes of any tiebreaker down the road. In other words, the people who did submit fully complete compliant applications will be getting an advantage for having done so, in that their date of receipt will precede others who are now supplementing, but we do want to give these folks a chance to supplement so we have a broader pool of potential applicants.
Will this be like a one-time waiver then,
Yeah.
Luke? Okay.
Yeah, and we've talked internally about the need going forward to make sure that as an email, for example, comes in with an application, that email gets reviewed, the materials are reviewed in the same way they would be with an in-person drop-off, and that an email would go back out to the applicant, either confirming that their application has been accepted or indicating that the application is incomplete and cannot be accepted and needs to be supplemented, so that we don't have to do this again.
Can I ask a question? So, or I'm sorry, Keith, were you finished?
Yeah. I do have another question, but go ahead. You can go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I guess my question is, is there going to be something, I don't know, documented in terms of what the policy is going to be from here on out? A procedure or something that's going to be in place that anybody and everybody can read and understand?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Keith. I think that should happen. Again, we're to some extent dealing with unusual circumstances because
Sure.
of COVID, and
Sure.
so learning as we go for those reasons. But we've discussed internally the need to develop a protocol. In my view, the protocol should be in writing, again, for purposes of transparency and so that everyone can understand what it is. So yeah, that's a reasonable question and position to take, and it behooves the administration to develop a policy going forward so that it's just clear to everyone what will happen.
Okay. I'm done, Teresa. I'm done.
Okay, I just have a couple points. So the authorization to post applications and receive them on our last meeting, was that just for this test? Or did we, because that's not in the minutes and I don't remember from my notes. Because, I know we had some discussion about that might help us get that broader pool that both chiefs have kind of talked about. So, we got to be really careful if this is going to be, if the city's going to be doing this more and more electronically. I think we really have to have a good procedure in place. And if what,
yeah, I'm wondering, I'm just thinking out loud here, Therese, maybe what we should do is draft a new proposed rule for your consideration.
well, my concern is, one, the rule requires either the city witnesses the person signing the application or there's a notarization. Did any of these applications have notarized signatures?
I don't believe so. And a handful, it's just a handful of them didn't have signatures because we created a fillable PDF, or the website master did. And people then just typed out their application and emailed it directly to me. So that's just a simple matter of them signing it if you allow at the test date. I think going forward, if we do continue accepting electronic applications in the future, what I would suggest is doing like when you apply for a job on Monster, whatever those websites are, I don't know. And when you apply for a job and it's asking you for documentation, there is an area that asks for it and you have to upload it right there so that you can see everything. So that obviously would take some time for the webmaster to build out. We didn't have that time in this situation, but that should be, that going forward would be a simple
Yes.
fix.
Yeah, because our rule does require that they sign, you know what I mean? I think we have to look at that,
216-906-0383.
you know, Mayor gotta mute himself. So, thanks. So I think we have to look at that. So I don't want to pass a rule now. Like, we need to think about that and coordinate it there. But it says that the signature had to be in front of the secretary of the commission or their designated subordinate or notarized, right? So the city is authenticating that signature or is having a, notary licensed by the state notarize that signature for a reason. I don't know the history of civil service to know why those were in there, but so, and I know the electronic thing is new and we didn't require it on this, but I'm just thinking the signature thing. So that's my first thought. And then the second thing, and this is just, I'm talking, I'm not deciding anything. I get that they hand delivered it and then the city went through it because it's probably a lot of stuff and some of them are probably young people and it's their first and there's stuff and like you want to get the best pool. But I think we got to have a time frame on it. Like they're notified, I think, either, and they acknowledge that they received this because when were these due and we haven't said anything? Like how long ago? Unmute yourself.
They were due at the end of the month.
Yeah, so it's already 9 days. So I think they have to be contacted and, verified, and then you got to give them a cutoff time.
Sure.
I'm just like, coming back and then penalizing them for something, and maybe our system wasn't the best. I don't know. You know what I mean? And that signature requirement. Sometimes PDF forms aren't the easiest to read. You know what I mean? And you think you check a box and you signed something and you didn't. I'd hate to have them penalized for not signing if it can be looked at that our form wasn't the easiest form if we're really trying to make this thing open. That's just a thought. I get it if they didn't, that's much different than not supplying information, I think. Signing an application, that's, I don't know, I'm just thinking.
I think that's reasonable, Therese. I mean, that's my feedback is, if you just want to waive that Rule 3, Section 3 requirement, let applicants come in and sign the document on the day of the test. That way it's witnessed by the city and we can deem it done without any sort of penalty. So if that's the only missing piece in any given person's application, their application would be deemed to be received as of the date, we got the email. But then treat folks differently who didn't include items that were required in the application, like a driver's license or evidence of diploma or something like that. I think that's a reasonable approach. I
But
mean,
you're
obviously I don't vote. Your commission members' opinion about that is much more important than mine.
But you're still, I mean, the question from the law thing is like, yeah, I mean, is it such a failure that it should, make them not eligible? I mean, I'm sure that's why the history was that when people filed their application, you had a city worker go over their filed application to make sure, before they accepted it, to make sure it was complete. You know what I mean? There was city assistance, and there has been city assistance.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's, you told me that. I didn't know that until you told me, but I think it doesn't make sense for us not to do that again, but, what do you guys think, Keith and Steve?
My thought, I'm inclined to support the waiver because I agree that it's unfair to penalize these persons who, when we didn't have a policy in advance and we handled things differently when there was a hand-delivered application,
Yeah.
we gave them the benefit of the doubt. I think in principle, and also with the idea of trying to expand and widen the scope of applications as much as possible, because we know there's been difficulty in the past trying to find suitable candidates, et cetera. I guess my only concern, and again, this case is an exception, is when you don't submit a complete application, that's on you, right? You know that if you didn't follow the directions of having a driver's license or whatever other, transcript, whatever other information is requested, that's a failure on your part. And that's not to say that the city should be in the practice of being overly harsh and just, automatically rejecting these applications because you didn't follow through. But ultimately, again, in the end, it is the applicant's responsibility to make sure that they've complied with all the requirements.
I agree with Steve's premise, but at the same time, also, as he also indicated, I think we have to think about a waiver of some sort at this point because all this was just so new. But, in the future, I think we have to really have our protocols in place here so we can obviously just say for sure in the future, if somebody, submitted a deficient application, hey, that's just on you. But right now, I don't think we're at that point. So that's why I think maybe in terms of what transpired in this instance, that a waiver, one-time waiver would be applicable.
So, so what kind of time, I mean, you don't want to give them, they still have to complete the application. So how much time are you thinking? From the date they're notified? And how do you know they received the notification? Do you call them and follow up with an email, or do you email follow up with a call? You know what I mean? You're gonna have to document that you notified them. And what's a
Well,
reason?
that's a good logistical question. I don't know.
I think you need to, because you can't leave it unlimited.
No, I agree.
Or do you give it to, they show up, you don't want him show them up at the test.
Well, may I suggest we work backwards from the test date, figure out, the last possible date by which we would want to have that information based upon when the test date is, and then give them a deadline before that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, from the time you notify them, I think you give them, 3 business days, but, because they were supposed to have it in anyhow. So they should have this stuff.
So they've not been notified that their application was complete, right? Incomplete. Right, okay.
And then how do you,
Well,
you got to call them on a Monday and they got to have it in there by Friday is what it is, really.
well, the problem with 3 days is what if the notification ends up being in writing? What if we're emailing or writing them a letter? That's not going to, 3 days is not.
No, I
gonna-
mean, you have to verify that they received it. So
Right.
what, they have to email you back, or you know what I mean? And the 3 business days, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out, but they should have all that stuff there.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to also get it done. You know, you don't want it 7-10 days out there. You know, it's just so, right? But after you, there's got to be a way that they know that this is a problem, it's deficient, they
Mhm.
correct it, and they got to get it, you know, fixed. They can deliver it. They can drive it, drop it off at the city. You know? I mean, there's got to be something, or I think you're just opening up yourself to a can of worms. You know?
I think there should be a deadline. I just think 3 days seems awfully aggressive.
Yeah.
We don't know what else these people are doing at the time that we
I
contact.
threw it out, Mayor, I threw it out.
All right.
You know,
So
and
what's your thought, Mayor? I mean, you're talking 5? Like, what range are you thinking?
do it as
of?
business days.
Well, my thought was, as I stated,
And-
was what is the date of the test? What is the date by which we would like to know based upon when that date is, and then fashion a date from there. I would suggest we work backwards. Now, would somebody refresh my recollection as to when the test is for this set of applications
It's the 25th
of,
April.
all right. Okay, so that is coming up very quickly.
Yeah, we got to get it done.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
Rod, Chief, what do you think? What do you guys think? Do you guys have any, Mr. Bolin, Mr. Rogers, do you guys have any ideas? I'm not doing this day to day. I don't, you know, you guys know more, the applicants, like what they'd be doing, whether, you know.
It's really hard to say. And if you're asking my perspective, I have a few things to say on this. You know, we've had difficulties in our industry for an extended period, and likely more so after last year of trying to attract qualified and interested candidates, as previously indicated. So just with taking that into consideration, and even beyond that, my position or somebody from my agency wouldn't really be involved in any way or really have a perspective on the administration of collecting applications. So I really wouldn't have a perspective.
Well, just when you were a candidate, you know, what would you, if you got this and you said, hey, I want this job, but city calls you and says, your application was deficient, you know, we're giving you 3 days to get the paperwork in here. Do you think, is that reasonable?
I think 3 days is more than reasonable considering
Yeah.
they should have had the information to begin with.
Right,
Yeah, it was very clearly written on what was needed, and as indicated, it does fall on the candidate to an extent of providing what's requested and clearly identified on the front of the packet to a degree, obviously. But, you know, candidates that turn in applications and not knowing they're deficient in any way after a significant period of time, you know, that wouldn't be a good feeling if they found out that for some reason they couldn't take the test, obviously. But if they were given proper notification and a reasonable amount of time to respond, I would think those that are still interested would be grateful for that opportunity to
so
make.
on the application, is there a phone number and an email address and a mailing address? Like, is there multiple ways to communicate with them?
Yes.
Because I know sometimes I'll send an email and you never hear back to the person. I go, so now I say, if I need to make sure they got it, I say, please confirm receipt, you know, or something, because if you want it, but then I'll, you know, text or, I mean, so we can get that. I mean, you could get this out this afternoon, you know, or Monday morning first thing and say, you got to get back to me by Tuesday at 4 that you received if I don't hear from you, you know, through text, phone message, and you document that.
Well, I was going to suggest,
Something like that.
given the 25th being the test date, that we notify everybody by close of business on Monday, the 12th, and that everybody have their supplements in by close of business on Friday, the 16th.
Rachel, can I ask a question? I'm sorry, and if you said this and I didn't hear it, my mistake. And if you know, in the past, when the application was hand delivered and it was incomplete, was there a certain number of days that the applicant had to submit that additional information? You're on mute.
I think,
Sorry, I'm sorry, Megan, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think how it was done previously is when you had, and this is of course without COVID protocols, somebody who could sit there and look at the application while the applicant stood there. Those of us who were receiving the application could read it over, hand it back to them and say, this is incomplete. You need to go and get these items and be back here by the deadline. So it wouldn't be that it was 3 days or 5 days. It'd be if the deadline was the end of the month, you need to be back here by the end of the month with a completed application. I believe that's how that went. But because we're accepting applications by email, because we're accepting applications to be dropped off without contact, we don't have that in place to do that. And that's what's come up here. And that's why we believe this is a unique situation.
So our compliance policy is certainly changing in that respect because we're putting a hard deadline on it, where it sounds like before they certainly had more than 3 days to come into compliance.
Although I think that would depend, Steve, on when they were.
Right.
I think they had to get everything turned in by whatever the deadline was in the notice. So if they were coming to City Hall, 3 weeks before that deadline, they had kind of, all the time in the world. But if they were coming in, the day beforehand or the day of, then they weren't afforded any additional time beyond the deadline. They were just informed your application's incomplete. We can't accept it. It's missing X, Y, and Z. So you could, if you were coming to City Hall at 4:30 on the date it was due, and you didn't have a copy of your high school diploma, you could potentially, be ineligible as having not submitted a completed application.
So that's interesting that we would be making an exception in this case as well, depending on when the application was submitted. In other words, if I went by what we did when it was hand delivered, I would look at those applications, the date those incomplete applications were submitted versus the deadline, and give them the difference in time in order for them to come into compliance, as opposed to someone whose application was submitted at the last minute, was incomplete, and now, because they're doing it electronically, we're giving them additional time that they never would have received if it was hand delivered.
Well, I mean, in some sense, that's true, but I think there are two, again, going back to my earlier remarks, they're kind of, well, first of all,
Well, I think first thing, it's a notice issue primarily.
yeah.
I don't think it's just a timing issue. I think it's a notice issue. Even under the scenario which someone comes in at the last minute, I guess when you have the in-person communication, that person at the last minute is told at the last minute, you're not complying, and you have, 5 minutes to comply. In this instance, we're not telling them anything from what I'm gathering. And I think that's the distinction.
Yeah,
Right. And that's my concern. And I will just note that in preparation for this meeting, we did a little legal research and conferred with our labor counsel about some case law that we found where in a municipality, they had a round of civil service exams pursuant to which applicants had submitted applications for promotion. So these were current employees. And subsequently, they wanted to go through another round of testing, and they indicated to employees who had previously applied but not been promoted that they did not have to submit anything new. They could just indicate they wanted their name thrown, in the hat, and they would be deemed to have submitted a complete application. And so the application deadline for that second round of testing came and went. And then there were some applicants who had previously applied who were told, well, your applications weren't complete for whatever reason. And they were saying, well, wait a minute. You told us we didn't need to submit anything new. So it was as though you had accepted our applications. We should be considered for the testing. And the court agreed with those employees. And it's not a perfect analogy. It's not directly on point, but it is similar in the sense that some of these applicants, I think, could have an argument that they thought their application had been accepted because they never heard otherwise from the city, when in the past they would have. So that is the notice issue, I think, that Mr. Thomas is correctly, distinguishing here. Then I think that the second issue is, well, how much time do you give them? And at least from a standpoint of logic and fairness, I don't disagree, Steve, with what you're saying, that it might be true that different applicants should be given different amounts of time depending on, the timing of their original submittal. But as a practical matter, that's going to be way too difficult for us.
No, and I'm not recommending that, Luke. I realize that's impossible, and that really, it looks even worse in a lot of ways. I'm just saying, if you're trying to make an apples to apples comparison, it just seems unfair, if you will, that the person who submitted their application, at 4:45, as opposed to one who submitted it 2 weeks earlier and they were both incomplete. The late one, almost late one, is able to take advantage now of that oversight.
And maybe that's where, that's why I was thinking too, the quick time period on getting that resolved, once they have notice of the deficiency. But, and Luke, does that kind of get to your point though? Originally, why you would say that might be a tiebreaker? Then if you do have a tiebreaker from someone who submitted everything complete, on the March 31st at 4:30 p.m. versus, later, that
Right.
would be.
Right.
Yeah, that makes, but see, that gets to the notice too, because they didn't know that it was incomplete until we tell them,
You can kind of argue that issue either way.
Yeah,
I didn't find anything on point relating to that. But my thought is that someone who has submitted a complete application should be rewarded over someone who hasn't, if there's going to be a tiebreaker. Because otherwise, you could have a hypothetical situation where if you're just going to say, we'll deem everything accepted as of the date we were emailed, you could have someone who submitted an incomplete application a day before someone who submitted a complete application, and the incomplete applicant is enjoying the benefit of the earlier email submittal. And to me, that seems off.
That's an excellent point. I agree.
So if you do follow the mayor's suggested timeline whereby every applicant would receive notice, and we can get to what that means in a minute, on no later than end of business on Monday the 12th, and they're told that they have to get everything in no later than Friday the 16th, you'll still have the potential for there to be differentiation in submittal.
Okay.
And, because someone will submit on the 12th, someone 13th, 14th.
14th and so on. Yeah.
And that'll create your timestamp, if you will. And the folks who submitted the complete application in a timely manner will all be in line before them, which I think is appropriate.
So are you going to notify them that the sooner they get it in, the better if it comes to tie break? I mean, because if I have a due date, if I have till Friday, sometimes I get it in on Tuesday or Wednesday, but sometimes I don't get it until Friday. So
Yeah, I think that's
always
right.
one day due date.
We need to have a script. We need to have a script that we're giving to these folks. It's got to be the same exact thing to every person. So if notice is, they get an email and they get a phone call, the email needs to be the same email for each person, and the phone call needs to be a script. This is Rachel Mullen. I'm calling from the city of University Heights in connection with your Civil Service Commission application. There were materials missing from your application as follows. The city is giving you until the end of business on Friday, April 16th to complete your application. If your application is not completed by that time, it will not be considered and you will not be able to sit for the exam. And the timing of submittal of your application is relevant for purposes of any tiebreaker. So the sooner you turn in your materials, the higher your place in line will be in the event of a tiebreaker. Something like that.
Can you include that in the email as well?
Yeah. The email and the script should be virtually the same.
Okay.
And we should just make sure that they're getting the notice actually. That's the best we can do in what's, an imperfect and challenging situation because of COVID and the timing of the test.
I think something like that lays down, objective criteria. I think that, that's consistent and can be followed and is clear as, under these circumstances, I think that should be pretty good.
It can even be applied then as to a tiebreaker between two applicants who both had to supplement, because if one supplemented by Wednesday and one by Friday, well, then it's
Well,
Wednesday.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what they should know is, if there are 8 applicants who need to supplement their applications, there's going to be an order.
So, and the signature is considering as a supplement too, right? Or,
I don't think so. I think we need a signature, but I don't think that's the same as a supplement. That's just.
so I disagree on that. I mean, I do disagree, but I just think signing the application is a requirement. That's what gets me to Rule 3. It says you had to see it signed in front of somebody or it had to be notarized. So there's a reason to that.
Well, I think we're in a position then where every application needs supplemented.
No, I think they were all signed. Didn't you have it signed? None of them were signed?
If they have to be signed in front of somebody when they were dropped
No,
off.
I'm not saying they have to because we accepted electronic.
Right.
Rachel, my understanding is just a few of them came back unsigned.
But you're muted. But
Rachel.
You're moved.
But it's either signed in front of or notarized. I don't believe any of them are notarized.
Well, I know, I understand that, Mayor. My point is though, waiver for the signature requirement, I understand because we did not incorporate Rule 3 into the electronic, which we either have to amend the rule or incorporate it, after this, but there were applications that the only deficiency was that it wasn't signed. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I think those should be deemed just as a failure to, like with the other missing materials. I think not signing your they had, are the ones with missing a signature, are they complete in all other respects?
Let me just go through here. Let me see. One is missing a high school
Know
diploma.
what they're missing, but
Yeah, missing a high school, two are missing a high school diploma, three are.
so, but how many missed their signature?
Missing one, two, two people typed them out. So, you know, because they were doing the PDF. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures if you include the ones who just typed their name on there.
So 3 of them have to get everything in, including their signature by Friday. The other 2 who don't have it signed but weren't missing material, I think they have to have a signed document. That's my opinion. I think they need to have a complete by that day too. Because otherwise we wouldn't have accepted their application, right?
Yeah.
If it wasn't signed, we would have sent it back. Say, get it signed,
I think that's true.
right? I mean, so,
I think that's true. I mean, but, I mean, we're not saying that they can't cure it by submitting
no,
something
I'm saying
signed,
it should be
correct?
part of the cure.
Okay.
I don't think it should be a simple, separate waiver. I see it as, lacking as,
No, I see your point, because that is
Yeah.
the rule. That is the rule. Yeah, so technically, it's not in compliance. So I mean, as long as that can be cured, I have no problem with that at all, with the
well, I
signature.
think that maybe what we do is we really waive Rule 3, Section 3 on either in-person witnessing by the secretary of the commission or her, or the notary, since nobody notarized and everything, we waive that rule, but we aren't waiving the signature requirement. Or are we? We're waiving the rule really for everybody because nobody complied with that rule from a technical standpoint. But most people did sign their application. And are we going to require the signed application as a requirement for this to be a complete application?
I wouldn't write the signature rule. You always have the option of dropping it off in person if you can't figure out how to sign it electronically. And I mean, I've had my issues with that, so I can relate to that, but we're giving them another option.
Right, yeah.
No, it seems reasonable.
Just to be clear here, since we provided a fillable PDF and we're willing to accept it by email, those are some of the ones that aren't signed, right? So we didn't really give them an avenue by which to sign something electronically. It's not like we had like DocuSign set up with this or something.
No, I get that, but didn't people sign it and then PDF it to you, their signature page?
But if they filled it out online, they didn't ever have a physical copy to sign.
Did anybody scan it back?
Oh, Rachel? did
Sign?
you?
Some did. Some of them just filled out the PDF online and then just emailed them.
So you're deeming those as incomplete? You're saying those aren't signed?
Those are included as the not signed ones, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you just send those back and say, sign it.
Okay.
Okay, and then one thing I want to point out is
I'm
one,
only one person, so Steve and Keith, I mean, it still is, whether it was, they filled it out PDF, but there were a lot of people who did sign it, scan the signature back, or physically sent it, right? We got to be consistent, I think.
No, I agree. I agree. As long as they're able to cure the signature issue, then I have no problem with that.
Luke, what do you think?
Well, I guess, I mean, I see both sides of the coin. I could go either way on this issue. In my mind, it's a bigger problem to have failed to provide information that was required under the application, such as a driver's license or a diploma, than it is to have typed your name into a PDF. I see the one being different by degree than the other, but that's why I'm wondering if you don't, with respect to the signature issue, say, you know, you have to cure it, but we're not going to punish you by sending you to the back of the line if that's the only issue with your application.
No, I agree with that.
No, that's reasonable. I mean, yeah, that's fine.
Versus
There were only two of
the
them.
incomplete
Yeah, well, I mean,
application where we're
one is
saying,
substantive,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
one is procedural, really. The
I think that's
signature is
right.
procedural, and the attachments are substantive. So there should be a distinction, since there is a distinction between the two issues.
Okay, I like
Especially
that.
because too, if you had come in and delivered it and the clerk had seen immediately you hadn't signed it, you would cure it immediately, right?
Right, right. Oh, and there's
Right.
only two of those. The other three who didn't sign, they have to submit stuff. Okay,
So I think, just to summarize that, with item 3, you would be granting the waiver subject to cure on or before April 16th, without there being any punishment of moving someone back in line.
right,
And then with item 4, it would be a waiver of the application requirements relating to completeness of the application, subject to cure on or before April 16th, with the date of submittal being moved. I don't know exactly how to say it, but with the date of submittal being deemed later than the original email, and based on actual submittal of the additional materials. Not the cleanest motion. I can see Steve laughing.
I need a script for that.
well, yeah, the date of the submittal being the date for purposes of any tiebreaker, if needed. What's the close of business on, I would put the time, so we don't get in anything. Is that 4 o'clock, 4:30?
4:30 would be closed. We could say 4 PM just for administrative convenience, gives us a half hour then to see where we are before wrapping up for the day.
I do need to bring up one other thing. There was one person I have to go through my notes to see, and I didn't even think about it until you guys brought it up with the list or the line. But he submitted it at the end, and then he sent his diploma like right after the deadline. Like, he sent his application and then his diploma came in shortly after that. So for procedural purposes, do I need to throw out his diploma and then ask him again on Monday for it? Since that's a time frame issue with the list, with the time of the list for a tiebreaker, or am I overthinking this?
No, we have to address it.
Was it the same day?
I have to look. I didn't think it was going to be, I'll be honest with you, this is obviously new to me, and I didn't think it was going to, I assumed that it was just going to be a matter of, let me see. I have to go through my things. It was either the same day or next morning or something like that. But I hadn't taken into consideration what you had mentioned about supplementing someone who needed a supplement. It might be a tiebreaker. So I don't know if you want me to then send him an email on Monday along with everyone else and say, I need this. I know you already sent it, but because of the rules, I need you to send it again. If that makes sense.
I think we can accept that. I mean,
Yeah,
Except the original one?
yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
and you have it.
I agree. That's making it a little too
Okay. And I'm
complicated.
really sorry that I don't really have a schedule or something for everything to go off of. So I'm learning this as I'm going. So
No,
thanks.
you're doing a great job. No, the electronic thing. So, I mean, you're making the rules right now. The city's making the rules right now.
Okay.
So, Um,
Well, let me suggest that we make our motions, and let me ask, can I have a motion to waive under item 3 on our agenda? Can I have a motion to waive the Rule 3, Section 3 signature requirement, subject to cure on or before 4 p.m. on April 16th? Is there a so moved?
I'll move.
So move, yeah, I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll call the roll then. Mr. Sweeney Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes,
Mr. Gilat,
Yes,
almost done.
Okay, and let me see if I can make this motion a little more efficient. You're laughing before I even start.
we're just glad we don't have to do it.
Well, he read the case law, so he knows what words have to get in there.
So with
my
respect.
laugh is a laugh of relief, but go ahead.
Solidarity, right? All right, with respect to item 4 on the agenda, can I have a motion to waive the application requirements relating to completeness of the application, subject to cure of any completeness requirements on or before 4 p.m. on April 16th, with the tiebreaker in connection with any applicant scores being determined by the actual date of completing the application. Is that not clear?
That's very clear. Can I add something? Do we need to have a time? An actual time stamp, like Rachel actually time it on the, or not? Is that getting too, Nick? Because we said by 4 p.m. So if I submit it, Friday morning at 9 a.m. and someone does it at 3:59, they're treated the same?
No, I think
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's, we can measure it in real time by the receipt of the email, or if someone happens to walk into City Hall, we have to timestamp that.
Okay, then I think,
Document it.
I think we should add that in the motion, that it will be that specific. And partly your script, so that they know the urgency, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay, so I agree with your motion with just the addition of the actual time element being included. And I'll make that motion.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Mr. Gilat, I know you have to go at 2. Yes?
Yes,
Okay. Mrs. Sweeney Drake,
Yes,
Mr. Thomas,
Yes,
thank you, Steve, for staying here. I know you got another meeting.
I actually got reset, so I'm okay.
Oh, great.
oh,
Okay,
thank you. Sorry about that.
I would have spoken up earlier.
I keep looking at the clock, freaked out about that 2 o'clock that I
Yeah.
promised you would be done by.
okay. Well, anything else? If you want me to look at anything, or you want us to look at anything, Luke, before with that script, I'd be glad to take a quick eye on it. Which you're gonna just to offer that. You don't need to, I'm just offering. Is there any other business before the commission?
The only thing is that Vanessa from Clancy, she suggested I at least have the phone number of one of you during the test in case there's an issue, because she said after they sit for it, if there's any issue, she's not expecting anything, but that way we can contact one of you to resolve it or be a judge on some issue.
Yeah, you can give him my number.
Okay, well, I'll be there. And I won't abuse your number, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, so if you need,
Okay,
yeah. So
Okay.
Is the 20, what time is it at?
Gosh, is it 1 and 4? Is yours at 1, Dustin? I'm trying to remember. And I apologize. I had a procedure this week and it's affected my memory.
Oh, that's okay.
It's okay. Dustin, is yours, what time is yours on the 25th?
Yeah, 1 sounds about right.
Okay. I have so many numbers running in my head right now.
Okay, just so I'll be available in case. Okay.
Nope, early afternoon, and then the fire department's after.
Okay, so
Right.
afternoon. Okay, good. Okay, anything else, anybody? Okay, thank you very much. Have a good,
We need a motion to adjourn.
I always forget that.
That's the most important part.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the roll. Ms. Sweeney Drake,
Yes,
Mr. Glatt,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
okay. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Everybody, thanks for
Bye-bye.
making.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.